Hi there, Terry here with the 45th episode of the Animation Industry Podcast. Today I'm chatting with someone who's pretty much one of the four founders of stop motion here in Canada, as I consider him, because he started the first stop motion film festival in the world right out of Montreal. And so today's chat is going to be a lot about the history of stop motion here and where it's headed as an industry. But first, I have a sponsored message to share with you. And it comes from my friends over at Bloop Animation, which is an animation learning platform packed with premium online video courses for aspiring animation filmmakers. And they have courses for all major animation programs like Maya, Animate CC, Toon Boom, Blender, TVPaint, and many others, as well as some non-software courses like a storyboarding course, animation foundations course, and even one about making graphic novels, which covers absolutely everything you need to know from start to finish. And their courses are all in video form, so there are no deadlines or application process. You simply just pick a course and start learning in seconds. And they even offer a free ebook titled Making an Animated Short, which covers their entire process step by step of how they made one of their films, from coming up with the idea, storyboarding, animation, and all the way to exporting the film. And you can get that book for free at bloopanimation.com/animationindustry. And you can check out their complete course library at bloopanimation.com/courses. And I'll include both those links in the description of this podcast. So please check that out. Now back to today's episode. The person I'm chatting with today is Erik Goulet, who has been active in the film industry since 1990. Since then, Erik has worked for several Montreal production companies before joining Softimage as a 3D product specialist from 1998 to 2008, and now he currently teaches stop motion animation at Concordia University, which is the same university from which he also graduated himself in animation. So, his passion for stop motion techniques pushed him to create the world's first stop motion film festival in 2009, the Montreal Stop Motion Film Festival, now known as Festival Stop Motion Montreal, and I'm sorry about my bad French accent. And Erik has been constructing armatures also since 1988, and his diverse expertise, ranging from armature construction to animation, has made him a stop motion staple in Montreal. Plus, I also have a personal connection to Erik that goes back over a decade, because when I was 18 years old, I reached out to him for some career advice in stop motion, and he gave me a wonderfully detailed response back then. So let's jump right into the chat. So Erik, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. What about you, my friend? Thank you so much for inviting me. I think what you're doing is really incredible to connect everybody in the animation field. And I'm very honored to be here, and that you're interested in knowing a little bit more about me.
Yeah, of course. You're as I said in the intro, a staple in stop motion. And I'm happy I clicked record this time because we had to redo the intro. I'm very happy to have you on, and thanks for taking the time. So I wanted to chat about four main things with you. First, your journey into Canadian stop motion, because I think that's really cool. How you came about becoming a pioneer by founding the first stop motion film festival in the world, which is amazing, by the way. Your experience as a stop motion professor, and finally, your ultimate plan to change the industry of stop motion in Montreal. So let's start with where it all began for you.
Okay, so I'm 52 years old, so I'm pretty much a generation that grew up in the 80s, and I was very, very fortunate to actually see Star Wars in the theaters when it came out in 1977. I was 10 years old. I was in fifth grade. I saw the movie. My dad took me and my brother to a screening, and I was just blown away. I went like, "Oh my God, what is this? What are the special effects? How are they done? The laser blasters and the spaceships and the little figurines, on the chessboard." All of these things, like really fascinated me. And back in those days, there's no internet. So if you are looking for some information, well, you've got to purchase magazines, and we were really lucky in those days that we had the Starlog, the Cine Fantastic, the Cine Magic, and all of that you could pick up where they were selling the magazines, and you could read on how the special effects were actually done. So gradually, over the years, I went from being a fan of special effects and films in generals in the 80s. And then at some point I said to myself, hey, I'd like to make films too. I'd like to tell stories, and that kind of led me to knowing a little bit more about filmmaking. And eventually, as I started doing my filmmaking, that was in 1986. Somebody told me, said, Eric, if you like doing, movies, why don't you go and study in that field? And I went like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, there's this university in Montreal, it's Concordia University, and they teach. They teach you how to make films. So, of course, I was in college. I was au Cégep de Sherbrooke in those days. So the next Monday, after that guy had told me about this, I went to the orientation department or whatever, and I asked them for the big book that would explain all the classes of Concordia. And when I started going through all of this, I went like, oh my God, film editing and animation and sound and camera manipulation. And I went like, okay, I want to go there. So when I finished college, I went to Concordia University. I did 1 year in film production, but I must say that that first year in film production, it wasn't really a fit for me because I was mostly somebody that was very science fiction and action orientated and things like that. And of course, that didn't really fit with the more visual artistry that Concordia was looking for. So I actually switched department. I went from film production to film animation. And in film animation, during that first year, we actually go through all of the techniques from hand-drawn animation. There was a little bit of computer animation in those days, but then I tried stop motion animation. And as soon as I started sculpting this character, it kind of clicked. It clicked in my mind that, oh my God, this is the thing, that I can really do. Sometimes people will ask you, oh, what are you going to do, when you're older? Or they're going to ask you, oh, do you think that you could do this? And sometimes there's some people that will answer, yes, I can. And until you really find, your passion, you're always going to be, oh, yeah, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. But as soon as I discovered, like stop motion animation, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So then after that, the course was kind of set, and I never stopped. I just kept on going after I graduated from the university.
Wow. I have so many questions to ask you about
Oh,
that,
shoot.
but one that's been sticking in my mind since kind of the beginning of your story is when you saw Star Wars. For me, I saw Star Wars as a kid as well, but all movies had special effects in them pretty
Mhm.
much. So it wasn't like super new, right? And especially nowadays with kids growing up, like special effects are like everywhere. So
Yeah,
when you saw it, was it like totally new for
of
you? Because I
course.
know that there were a lot of like 80s sci-fi movies going on
Yeah,
back.
but Star Wars started the trend. I mean,
Yeah.
that's 1977, right? So there was a couple of other films, science fictions that were done before, like Silent Running and things like that. But it was very kind of dark, and it was about for life and how you gonna go through. Compared to Star Wars, it was like pure fantasy, and it
Yeah.
was spaceships and it was adventure and it was all kinds of things, that was, I don't know, it hadn't been done, like in that fashion. So it really struck the mind. And I think that's why Star Wars today is still seen, as a milestone when it came out. Now, some people might agree or disagree with where we're at now with the Star Wars, but nevertheless, when it all started in 1977, it was a revolution. So all the other films that you were talking about, like in the 80s, they all came afterwards.
Right.
That was the seed that was planted. And a little bit like if we talk about Phil Tippett, when he was younger, he was seeing the films of Ray Harryhausen. And when Ray Harryhausen was younger, he saw King Kong, which was made with Willis O'Brien for the animation and all the special effects. So there's always, like a movie and a person that's going to influence you somewhere, somehow, and it's going to point you in the right direction. And a lot of people were saying, when I was younger, oh, you're so lucky. You know what you want to do, with your life later on. And I must say that it never struck me as being lucky. It's just that it's something that I really enjoyed and I saw myself doing in the future. And yeah, that's it.
So if you knew you were like, this is what I want to do, did you ever have moments throughout your career that you were like, maybe this isn't for me, or maybe I need to try something else because this is tough?
No, well, the thing is that I'm a pretty easy going kind of person. Sometimes when you go through life, you meet all kinds of people, in the work field, and some of them will have concepts as to, oh, when I'm going to be 30 years old, I need to be here, and I need to do that, and I need to have that title. When I'm going to be 40, I'm going to be head of a company, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. For me, I never had those goals. Um, I don't know, call it fate in life that it will provide you what you need as long as I think you're a good artist and you're doing, like the things that you really enjoy doing. To a certain extent, it will fall in place. It might take a little bit of time, but at some point, everything comes, to whoever applies themselves, like to do something. And sometimes I tell my students, I say, if you keep on hammering on that nail, people will recognize that, wow, he's really good, at hammering nails. That's what he's been doing, like all this time. So he must be an expert at it. And that's what happens. If you
Yeah.
are always trying one thing and then switching to another and then switching to another and switching to another, people won't really have time, like to notice what you're really good at and what really drives you. So you just got to keep at it. But I I I agree with you that it's not easy. I mean, when you finish school, you start in the business because, you've got to pay the rent and you've got to put some peanut butter on your toast, right? So you've got to find a job. But the thing is that you need to push to try to find a job, like in the field that you want to go into. And this brings me back, to a story that when I was younger, I was very fortunate that when I was younger, my dad always said, at home, said, "Oh, kids are meant, like to play. They're not meant to work." So I was really lucky that until I was 18 years old, I was pretty much doing whatever I wanted during the summertime with my brother and my cousin and my friends. But when I turned 18, then my mom, came over, said, "Okay, well, maybe now it's time, to find a little job, and get into the field or the market or whatever." And I told her, I said, "Well, I don't want to go and work at a company where I'm flipping burgers and things like that." And she said, "No, no, no, I'm not talking about that. Take the yellow pages, look at the companies, that are doing video productions or whatever, get in touch with them and offer your services." And that's what I did. So I made a couple of curriculum vitae, and I went to some companies that were shooting weddings in the area where I used to live, and I gave them my CV. And one called me back. He said, "Hey, I need an assistant, like to carry the porta pack that goes with the heavy camera for shooting weddings." And that's actually how I started. So I can thank my parent for having the vision of saying, "We want you to work, but you're going to start to work in your field." So it wasn't, of course, film. It wasn't special effects. It wasn't, storytelling. But at least I was getting my foot through the door. And hey, video editing, like followed after that, and then after that, other contracts. So I think if you always have, like somebody that's kind of pushing you in the right direction, it will make doors, slightly open up, and then you get to meet people, and then it's just a matter of continuing.
Yeah, I feel that. I especially like what you said about how if you try so many general things, you end up kind of not mastering
Yeah.
anything, right?
Mhm.
So if I were to, want your services right now, what are those skills that you've developed that people go to you for?
Well, when people are getting in touch with me, it's mostly for making armatures for stop motion puppets.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get in touch with me for doing foam latex injection, which a lot of people hate doing, but I love doing foam latex. I love, like mixing that stuff, injecting it in the mold and baking it and having a puppet, like coming out of there. I don't know. I get some fulfillment, in doing that. So armatures, either be ball and socket, wireframes, the foam latex, and also productions in general. Sometimes companies will get in touch with me and they'll say, "Oh, we need to build a puppet and we might need some animation as well. Do you know somebody who would be interested?" They present to me the project, and if I feel it's close enough, to the qualifications that I've got, then I'm going to say, okay, I'll take on the project. And what is very fortunate about the position that I'm in right now is as a teacher, I know a lot of students, former students, and I know their forces, their what they're really good at. So if I feel, that on the production I need, like some help for something specific, I've got a little list, give them a call or send them an email. Hey, are you free? I could really use your help. And then they come on board, and we work as a tag team. So that's pretty cool. So
You
that's
should be
usually what we do.
you
So
should be
that
careful saying this if in case your students are listening, they know you have a list now.
well, they already know.
Oh,
Every single one of them know, and actually, I invite them, to be on my list because I cannot force them to be
yeah.
on it. But when I finish my class, usually I tell them, I say, okay, I know what are your forces and your fortes. So if you want to work in the field, just send me an email saying that if something comes up, that get in touch with them. So yeah, it's very easy, very open.
So is it so you have this kind of mentality of, I'm going to develop my skills and kind of fall back into the world.
hmm
And I'm assuming most of the opportunities you've had have come through people contacting you or through connections and stuff.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit of information that sometimes my wife says, like, I hate you. You never had to look, like for a job in your life. They actually call you up. I go like, well, honey, I'm so sorry, but yeah, I've never been somebody lucky at winning money and things like that, but I've always been kind of lucky at being at the right place at the right time, or getting in touch with somebody at the right moment that something comes along afterwards. I go like, oh yeah, that guy gave me a call the other day, like I'll call him back. So working at William F. White, which was my very first official job in the field, which was just a rental house. They were renting film equipment. And I went there, gave them my CV, and I said, "Well, listen, I'd like to work for you guys. If you ever need my help, there you go." And that was the beginning of my search, like for a job when I finished the university at Concordia. And I I visited these guys, give them my CV, and then I go like, holy moly, I don't know any other companies. Okay, well, I better go back, like to my apartment and devise a plan, to see who else, like in Montreal, I could actually send my services or whatever. And then these guys, they called me back the same day at 5 o'clock, said, okay, we've got a production finishing. Do you want to come in? And I said, yes, sirree. And I worked there, like for 4 years. And the same thing happened after that with Production Pascal Blais. Bernard Lajoie called me up and he said, hey, we're looking for somebody to operate the motion control system that we've got in the studio. Do you know anybody that would be interested? And I said, well, it's a darn shame I've got a job because I would tell you I'm the first one interested. Oh, really? Do you think we can talk? And there you go. That was the second one. And the last one was at Softimage. A good friend of mine, Teresa Lang, she was working there. And I crossed her path in a theater, and she asked me, Eric, how are you doing? And I'm like an open book, If I'm not doing well, you'll know, even though I'm going to say, yeah, okay, what's wrong? I'm kind of fed up, and I'd like to change, horizons and jobs and things like that. And she said, why don't you apply at Softimage? We're looking for people, for doing a quality assurance and testing the 3D software. Oh, really? And there you go. And I did 10 years. So I was very fortunate with all of those jobs, and I've learned so much. And maybe that's one thing, that I'd like to tell the audience is that whatever job, that you get, sometimes you might feel, oh, renting film equipment, like that's not working in the film business. Well, actually, I was there for 4 years, and I learned a lot about lighting equipment, equipment, and then 16 and 35 millimeter camera maintenance and repairs and all of that. So it was a very good school for 4 years for learning all of that knowledge. So you pick that up and then you move on to another company and you learn other things. And then you just build and build and build. And that brings us to 2009. So 2009 is actually the year where I became a contractor. that I stopped working for companies and I actually became a company myself, because Softimage, the company I was working for, got purchased by Autodesk, and Autodesk was wanted to purchase the company. So what they usually do is that they let go of a lot of employees, like 50% of the workforce, so that they reduce the price that they're going to pay for the company. And I was part of that 15%. So I ended up, I ended up back home, and of course telling my wife, that I lost my job, and she started crying, and she's looking at me with this. I got this big smile on my face, and she goes like, "What? Why are you smiling? Like you just lost your job." I said, "No, this is like the best thing ever. After 10 years, like I had done enough. I wanted to do something else." And she said, "Okay, what are you gonna do?" And I just said, "I'm gonna do stop motion." And she says, "Well, what do you mean you're going to do stop motion? What are you going to do exactly?" And I just said, "I don't know, but that's what I want to do. That's what I studied. That's what I kept on doing, like weekends and weeknights and everything. I think it's time, like that it pays off." So I don't know life as a way, of listening to all of this, but 2 months later, somebody calls me for a rock video in stop motion. They're looking for armatures. And they said, "We've got 4 characters and a monster to do. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yes, sirree." And that was a production of Patrick Péris, La Famille Sac à Papier. And since then, I never stopped. I got to meet people and making contacts. And today, I'm as busy as I was way back, like in the days when I was working full time for companies. And I think even more busy.
Would you ever go back to working for a company again now that you've had this taste of?
It's sad to say. I don't want to burn my bridges by saying, like, "No, no, never, I'll never do that," because what if companies are listening to the podcast? But it's really hard for somebody that has become a contractor to go back, to a 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 job, because you are having too much fun. I mean, yes, I'm working a lot, but I'm doing what I like the most. I'm doing
Yeah.
stop motion animation from the time I get up until the time I go to bed. And actually my wife has, like to put a damper, said, "Okay, you've done enough this week, let's have some time off, let's go and do something." Because I could do this, 364 days a year, except Christmas.
I was
But
gonna say it's Christmas.
but the thing is that I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I know that I'm very fortunate to be in that position,
Yeah.
and that's why I try to give back, and I try to give back a lot.
Well, I think that's great. I think I love that you found something that you love you're gonna do no matter what type of thing. One question I had kind of before was what are some of the highlights of your career? But I almost feel like you just went through them unless there are other ones you want to discuss.
Well, I think the super big highlight is probably The Little Prince. When
Yeah.
the movie The Little Prince landed in Montreal, because of the contacts that I had established since 2009 all the way up to 2013. That's a very short period. So meeting some people, working on some productions, and it's my friend Dale Hayward from Sea Creature that actually referred me on the production of The Little Prince. They were looking for somebody to make the armatures, and he said, "Hey, I know this guy in Montreal. He makes armatures. Maybe you could ask him." And I could maybe tell the story because it's a really good one of the first production meeting that I had, because you've got to understand that we're in Montreal and there's no super big productions like that, in stop motion animation. So just having this, is kind of a dream come true. And I get called upon, like to go to this meeting. So there's me, there's one guy, his name is Jamie, and there's 2 other persons that are with us. And Jamie starts to talk about the production. He says, "Okay, well, Eric, this is a pretty big thing. The director is going to be Mark Osborne." And then in my mind, I go like, "Mark Osborne, the guy who did the film More, which is a stop motion film, and also, well, a stop motion film that was done on IMAX." And anyway, there's a whole story, like around all of this. And I was always in admiration of Mark Osborne. So I tell him, okay, wait a second. You're talking about Mark Osborne, the guy who did more, you know? Blah, blah, blah. He said, yeah. He's going to be, he's the director of the movie. So already in my mind, you know, there's kind of a little mini nuclear explosion that goes like, poof. And then he keeps on talking and said, of course, Anthony Scott is going to be directing or supervising the animation. And I'm going like, Anthony Scott, you mean the guy who worked on Nightmare Before Christmas? And he goes like, yeah, that Anthony. So there's a second little explosion in my mind, going like, poof, poof. And then at the end, Jamie is saying, okay, and on the production, we're going to be using the software I developed with my brother. So it's going to give us a chance, you know, like to test it out and do all of that. And so I go like, and what is that software? And he says it's Dragon Frame. Are you telling me that you are the Jamie Caleri, you know, that developed this, you know, and he goes like, yes, Eric, that's me. And then there's like this third explosion in my mind. I'm going like, holy macaroni, I got to be on that production. So, and of course, when I told Jamie, you know, this story, he said, Eric, don't you prepare, you know, when you go to a meeting, you know, and do a little bit of research on the person, you know, or the people that you're going to be meeting and talking to. And in my mind, I just went like, why would I deny myself of that pleasure of being on site, you know, and discovering all of these things, you know, as it's coming along. So, of course, he was partially right. I should have prepared more, but it's one of the nicest and coolest kind of mini meeting, you know, that I had that my brain just went like, oh my God, this is going to be so great. And of course, at the end, he told me, he said, would you be able to relocate all of your equipment in the studio so that you're really close to us for making the puppets and the armatures and all of that? And I said, oh yes, I can be anywhere you want to do this. So that was the beginning of a fantastic adventure. So from July 2013 until July 2014, we were working. We were approximately at the peak around 50 people, if you include all of the teams and people, you know, taking care of paperwork and all of that. And I was able to refer 6 of my former students from Concordia University to work on that as well. So they're at the beginning of their career. You already have the little prints, you know, in your resume. That looks pretty fantastic. So we were really happy. It was a very good year that that year. And of course, the movie came out in 2016, March 2016, and I tried to help out, you know, with the promotion of the movie locally here in Montreal, giving little workshops in theaters, explaining to the kids how stop motion is done, and so that was a big highlight, and meeting all of these people, working with Jamie and Anthony and Mark. I've got really good memory of all of that.
Well, thanks for sharing that story. That sounds like a dream to me also. I think if you knew who you'd be in the room with beforehand, maybe you would have been nervous.
Yeah, maybe I would have been nervous, or maybe it would have, I think it would have tainted my enthusiasm, you know. So sometimes having little surprises like this, you know, I think it keeps you on your toes, and it makes you more genuine also.
Yeah, I also like that you mentioned how you kind of got some of your students in there too. It's
Yeah.
like circling back to what you were talking about before. I think that's great. So maybe where are you at right now? I know you're working on some projects. You're
Yeah.
teaching. Is there anything else coming up like Little Prince? Did Little Prince change kind of the atmosphere in Montreal in stop motion?
Yeah, it changed it to a certain extent, and that's maybe a little bit. It's maybe a little bit of my sadness, you know, like at the end. That's going to talk now. Where as to when the movie came out, um, I thought that Montreal was going to pick up on that release and run with that business card in the sense that, hey, look, this was done in Montreal. We've got the talent, you know, we can do fantastic work. And also, I'm going to clarify just a minute. Even though we were, you know, like all of the basic talent, it was still the head of department. Some of them, you know, like were coming from the States and people were coming from elsewhere. But what I'm talking about is the core team, you know, of the people that were constructing the puppets and also constructing the sets and things like that. It was all people from Montreal. And when the movie came out, I remember with the distributor, they were talking about, of course, the movie, how great it was and everything. But I told them, I said, why didn't you attach Montreal onto the promotion of the movie? And the feeling that I got from this is that they said, well, we want to keep this, like on the international level.
Mm.
So either you can read it two ways, I think. Either you can read it that, well, we want to keep, a unified message for the promotion of the movie, or we want to keep an illusion that it was done, like somewhere where the magic is happening, a little bit like Hollywood, and that not necessarily, like Montreal, because it might influence people that, oh, it was done in Montreal, when in fact, every single person that has seen the movie has fallen in love with it, and we only get, like great compliments on the movie. So maybe it's never too late, to use it as a promo card, but Montreal has to kind of wake up and use that. Over the years, special effects, the game industry, film production industry, Montreal is known for that, for the X-Men and all of the games with the Ubisoft and all of those companies. But for us, like the little black sheep, which is called the stop motion team, we don't get, like a lot of recognition. We don't get, like a lot of promotion. We don't get. And that's my sad heart, that is talking right now, that I think we deserve more. And if Montreal would be, to actually help us out, like we could give, like a really good push, because they've got the channels to promote all of those other venues in Montreal. So why not, like tack ourselves onto this? But that's something we're going to talk about a little bit further down the line.
Well, maybe if somebody in the government of Montreal is listening to this podcast, then they'll,
Yeah, get in
okay, so
touch with Erik.
get in touch with there. I'll
He's
tell you
got
how at the
ideas.
end of this podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the stop motion film festival that you set up in Montreal.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a good time to chat about that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
it is the first stop motion film festival in the world. So first of all,
Yeah.
congratulations on setting that up. But how did that come to be? Because you said in 2009 you were laid off, and you were like, I want to do stop motion now, and then suddenly you created this international festival.
Mm. So let me give you the genesis of the idea. First of all, the okay. If we go back to 2001, I start teaching at Concordia University. That means I graduated in 1990. I go back in 2001 to the university and I say, hey, listen, I'd like to have the stop motion class, that I never had a chance to get when I was at Concordia, because they were they weren't like specialized in stop motion. There was nobody there specialized in it except one of my former teacher for a brief period of time, Denis Roy, which gave us a small class of 1 semester. But the thing is that there was nothing that was really targeted on that. So in 2001, when I approached the university, I said, hey, I'd like to teach stop motion animation. I've been doing it for all these years. I never stop and I learned a lot. I'd like to bring back my knowledge. And they told me, he said, oh, Erik, but we already have somebody. His name is Brian Dusher. And Brian was an animator from the National Film Board. He was from the prairies here in Canada. And he already started the stop motion class at Concordia. So, of course, I'm a bit sad, but Brian is a great guy, So I say, okay, well, that's fantastic. And so as I'm turning around, the lady at the counter says, hey, wait a second. Why don't you leave your resume? What if something happens? So 2 weeks before the semester starts, September 2001, I receive a phone call going like, Erik, like we lost Brian. He's going to go and work on a stop motion project in Halifax. So I heard you were interested in teaching. Do you think that you're still interested? I said,
No
of
wonder
course
your
I'm.
wife thinks you're so lucky.
Of course, I'm still interested. So she says, okay, well, there's just, like a hiccup. You're starting in 2 weeks. Do you think you can write a curriculum so that I have it, like to look over? I said, okay, we're Friday, Monday morning, it's on your desk. And as soon as I hung up, I knew what I wanted to have, like in that class. I knew what I wanted to teach. And then it brings us, to around 2007. In Canada, we've got the film festival in Ottawa, the Ottawa Film Festival, which has been around, for many, many years, and they show animated films. And in 2007, I went there to the festival, and at the end of the festival, I'm coming back to Montreal, driving back with my wife, and I'm kind of sad. And Veronica looks at me, goes like, "Erik, why the long face? We just went to an animation film festival. You should be super happy." I said, "Yeah, I should be, but we don't get to see enough stop motion. Like in one program that's an hour, 15 minutes, we see a couple of films, and I want more." And that's when Veronica says, "Well, maybe you should organize your own film festival." And that idea went in here and it never left, right? So 2007, I'm still working at Softimage, so I don't have time. But when I get kind of laid off in 2009, I'm working on different contracts. And then there's a downtime, a period where this idea comes back to me. And that's in end of July 2009. And I'm just giving you some months because you'll see how quick it was. So end of July 2009, I'm going to okay, I want to put a film festival together. Okay, I'm going to do it in October. So that means August, September, October. 3 months to organize it. And of course, I get some of my friends with me and I say, okay, I need a poster, I need a website, and I just need somebody to give me, like some feedback on organizing something. And then I've got the guys asking me going like, okay, Erik, so when do you want to do this? And I say, well, I want to do this in October. And they said, well, October is fine because it's going to be October in 1 year from now. So we've got plenty of time. And I said, no, October in 2 months from now. And of course, they start laughing and go like, Erik, nobody has ever organized a film festival in 2 or 3 months. It's impossible. I said, listen, we've got to do it, because there's a little voice that's telling me somebody else is going to do it, instead of us, so we've got to do it. So I put my mind, like in research mode for finding films. In 30 days, I received 113 films. I did a call for entries. I wrote to every single website that were connected to stop motion animation. I told them, I'm organizing a film festival. We're looking for films. Can you send this, to all of your members? So in 30 days, I received 113 films. I find a theater. I have a poster done. My friend makes a little website, and the first edition, or not even the first edition, the first gathering is happening in mid-October 2009. At the end of the festival, on the Sunday night, somebody comes up to me, he taps me on the back, and he says, okay, Erik, we'll see you next year. What? Okay, I guess we got to do a second edition. So then people started helping me out, and I just kept on going. But during that year that followed, somebody wrote to me, and it was somebody from Poland. And he said, Erik, do you know that you are the first stop motion film festival in the world? I said, you must be kidding. Other people have done stop motion events. There has been, other things. And he said, there has been things, but nobody kept on going. If you stop there, of course, you're just going to be like the others, one event and that's it. But if you keep on going, you'll be the first one in the world. And if you allow me, I'll start one in Poland and I'll be the first one in Europe. And I said, okay, sure, we go for it. So there's one that started in Poland the following year. And then the third year, somebody from Brazil got in touch with me, said, oh, that's not a wonderful idea. We want to make one too. Can we have your blessing? Sure, you can start your festival. I don't have a copyright, on making a festival. So since then, we've got Mexico, we've got Switzerland, Barcelona, we've got Poland, we've got Brazil, and there's others also that eludes me. But there's approximately 6 of us now that are doing festival that are strictly stop motion orientated. Now, I said at the beginning that the idea came from Veronica a little bit when she told me, oh, you should start your own film festival. But that period of time, from 2007, 2009, because I was too busy, it's actually in 2009 also when I was teaching that a student came up to me at Concordia, and that student told me, she said, Erik, you transmitted to me, like this passion of stop motion animation, and I want to do that for the rest of my life. So starting the festival was, first of all, for me, kind of seeing more films, but I discovered really rapidly that it could become a tool to actually assemble everybody that's interested in stop motion in Montreal, to kind of gather people that have the same interest, start to know who is doing what. Or you're doing a film in your basement, or you're working for a company, you're doing some stop motion, da, da, da. Where do you get your information? Where do you get your... There was none of that before. Everybody was left and right doing their own stuff, and now we've got an annual event where people get together, we see each other, we talk about things, you make contacts, and then after that, the rest of the year is, well, productions and things, that are happening, and people getting in touch and slowly evolving through all of this. So the festival was really a catalyst when it started in 2009.
So I guess the real question is, why haven't I made it out to this festival yet? I've
Well,
been on your mailing
now,
list since the inception, pretty much.
now that you'll be with us, like next year. We're preparing the
Is
uh,
it
the
still in
the
October?
12th edition.
Wow.
No, it's a lot earlier now. It's mid September.
Ah,
Because as the years progress, we discover things that, well, organizing a festival, a lot of people are asking me, going like, okay, Erik, is it complicated to organize a festival? You need some film, you need a theater, you need to invite people, and you need a cake. If you've got, like those four elements, all the rest, is just icing on the cake, right? So I always treated the film festival as a party where we get some films we want to show in the theater, we got some people, and let's have a cake, and let's have some fun. And I always kept that mentality, and I think it pays off because people realize that when we are doing the event, it's actually from the heart. There's no money to be made, with a festival. There's not enough, like generating money for people to be actually paid, like full time to work on it. But we make enough money, to kind of break even, and there's a little bit left over, which we reinvest, like in the following year. But it pays off in making contacts, getting the community together, and all of that. So for me, it was really important to see it that way, and I think that's why we've got a very good reputation because people feel that we are doing it from the heart.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So how many people came out to the first festival?
Oh, the first festival. That's a very good question. I'm going to tell you that I don't remember exactly the numbers, but I'm going to tell you this. The very first edition, the people that were there were my colleagues, the family, and the friends. Those are the people that came because the first edition, I didn't do a lot of promotion because I didn't even know if I was going to have some films. But when I saw that I received 113 films in 30 days, I went like, oh, okay, there's a demand from filmmakers to project their films, in a real theater setting. Not look, at your film on your little iPhone, and a little television and things like that. Like a real theater where it's supposed to be presented. So the demand was there. But because it was so short in organization, I only invited really quickly people that were in my surroundings. So the friends, the colleagues, and the students at Concordia and things like that. But as the years progress, my friends kind of disappeared. My colleagues disappeared also, but they were replaced by genuine stop motion enthusiasts. That means that people that we were finding along during the year, they would come and gradually they were replacing my original friends because we'll be honest, right? When we're making films and we're showing them, to our mom and dad, of course they're going to say it's great, but they're not going to always be there, to look at the film. So there's kind of a natural turnaround with this. And in the end, what you want is in that theater that contains only 160 seats, you want 160 stop motion fanatic enthusiasts that are there, like to enjoy the movies and to share this experience and exchange on what they've seen and also learn, like new things.
Yeah. Do you get films from all over the world, or is
Yeah.
it, yeah.
All over the world. Usually, the festival we present between 60 and 80 animated shorts in competition because we only specialize in animated shorts. The feature films, there's no point for us, in showing them because they already have their distribution system with the Hollywood system and all of that. There's a couple of feature films that are done around the world. Sometimes they get in touch with us, and we can do a special screening at the theater. But what is our specialty is really the animated shorts. That means that in one program, which is an hour, 15 minutes, you can see between, I don't know, 10 and 18 animated shorts because they're all, they vary in length, right? So you sit down, and the way that we organize this is like a roller coaster ride. You can have a comedy, and then after that, you're going to have something that's a little bit more deep and emotional, and then we come back with a science fiction spoof, and then so the technique remains the same. It's stop motion animation, but it's used, for all of the colors of the rainbow, let's say. So it gives you a very broad range of everything that is being done around the world, and that's why we've got between 60 and 80 animated films every year that are presented in official competition. How many do we receive? We receive between, 300, 400, 450 films usually before the festival. We go through a screening. We are a comedy. We look at them. We rate them. And then after that, we pick the top most ranked ones. And it's sad to say that we go at the beginning of the list. We go all the way down here. And there's like a cutting point that, okay, we've got only 7 hours of screen time. We pick all this. But right here, there's beautiful films, that we cannot present because we don't have enough time, and that really breaks my heart. And that's the portion where you write back, to the people and you tell them, I'm so sorry, like we didn't retain your film, and it breaks my heart. That is the toughest thing of all of the festival. All the rest, like I can deal with. But that portion there of sending an email saying to somebody that we cannot present their film, that really, like breaks my heart, because to me, somebody that makes a stop motion film, there's so much blood and sweat, that is being put into their ideas that you're putting on the screen, that all of the films should be screened. But unfortunately, if we would be a bigger festival, we would be more than just Friday night and Saturday and Sunday all day, like we could extend this. But yeah, that's the nature of the beast, I guess.
So if you want to see all the films, you have to be on the board, I guess. I have a question about.
You will be able to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've probably seen more stop motion films than anybody, really, I guess, if you've had to screen these films for a decade.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering, after seeing so many different, like you've seen comedies, romance, sci-fi, etc., every type of film made in stop motion, what kind of stands out to you specifically after seeing all this stuff? Is it a story driven? Is it the technique? Like what is something that makes you go, wow, this is stop.
I'm a very technical person, right? When I make my films, and sometimes my teachers at Concordia, they would say that, said, Eric, you've got to, it's the animation, it's the story, that's what is important. But I was young, and I was not naive, but I was young, and I wanted, like, oh yeah, making armatures and building things, that's really cool. So when we started looking at the films, I was much older, of course, and I kind of realized, and I know the question that you're asking, and it's the story and it's the film, as a whole. Sometimes I'll give you an example. I don't remember the name of the movie, but there was one year where we received a film that was done by a dad and his younger son. It was really rubber band, and it wasn't, like as slick as the movies, that you see in stop motion animation and all of that, that people are fantasizing, going like, oh my God, this is so wonderful. But the story was so good that even if the little character, instead of walking, like this, was actually sliding like this, it worked. So whenever we are looking at the movies, it needs, like to have a story, that's gonna touch us, or that's gonna grab us from the get-go. And sometimes you look at a film, that could be 1 minute long, and a 1 minute long, like is going to be more powerful than a 7-minute movie where things, like are just dragged on. So all of those things, we factor them in. So, well, yeah, we factor them in as to, I put myself in the shoes of the audience. I'm sitting in the theater and I'm looking at this film. So when the movie is finished, I look at it, go like, oh my God, did that blow my socks, and I want to tell the whole world, that it's the best thing I've ever seen. Or it was really good and I want to tell people to go and see it. Or is it, like really good that I want to see it again? So all of these things, I'm asking these questions. And if I go like, oh yeah, okay, well, I've seen it once. Yeah, it was all right. Okay, it's okay. So that is what, is grading the film. Now you might say, but Erik, aren't you afraid that this is going to taint the style of the festival, in a sense that it is a festival where Erik and his team are actually choosing the movie, and it's going to be his style or vision, that's going to prevail? And actually, no, because over the years we've changed and we've grown, the selection committee, and I discovered that pretty much, like everybody has the same expectation from a movie. They want to be entertained. They want to have a good story. If it's super well done, like technically, great. If it's got, like a little bit of clink clang, like here and there, but it still works, it's even better. So the people that are now, like doing the selection of all of the films, because now I'm part of the administrative council, so I don't do that anymore. They pretty much think just like me, because we did it, for 2 years together. I know exactly, like how they think. And I know that 90% of all of the films that are presented are exactly the ones, that I would have chosen. And the little 10%, that they're choosing is something that sometimes I would have said, oh, really? And then it's presented and people go like, oh my God, that was so good. I go like, oh, okay. I guess, like all the the flavors of the world, are out there. So that makes for a good selection, let's say.
So I had another question kind of popped in my mind while you were talking about this, and it's something that I've been exploring in my own mind because I'm studying animation right now. So I'm studying 3D and 2D and also stop motion on my own. It's why stop motion? Why not 2D? Why not 3D? Why not live action? Like, what makes stop motion the preferred medium for telling a story? And you've seen so many. What is your reason for choosing to do stop motion, other than you personally enjoy it, right? But from an audience perspective, what is that reason they need to see it in stop motion versus something else?
That's a very good question. And over the years, people have asked me about this. Over the years, I've read articles, and even myself, I try to understand, what draws me to stop motion animation. I worked for Softimage for 10 years, which was I was a product demonstrator for 3D software. I'm not really well versed, like in 2D animation, even though I know about it, but I'm not, like the greatest person, like to draw. Stop motion talked to me because I can work, with those two hands and those two fingers. And I think that the other medium, the hand-drawn animation, yeah, it's really great. It's on paper and thing. A computer, you never get, like to actually touch, the things that you are doing. And there's kind of a digital dimension to it, that you'll never be able to access. I mean, the images are all pretty and beautiful and all of that, but everything stays on the screen, right? Compared to us, we can actually get to know that puppet. We can take that puppet, we can hold it, and it's something that is physical. And I think that as human beings, when they say that we need to interact, with each other, because sometimes when I'm working here, like at home, I'm working in the garage and I'm building armatures, and I work, like for, I don't know, a full week, and I'm all alone in the garage. And at some point, like I feel that I need to see some people and I need to connect with people, and I got to get out of here. And when I was younger, it wasn't like that. When I was younger, I could just be secluded for a very long period of time. I didn't mind it. But as you get older, you are kind of looking for, like this connectivity. And I think that stop motion brings back this connectivity that you are looking for material, working with the matter, but also it brings you back. And that's something, that people have been saying a lot, is your childhood memories. When you were a kid, that you had, like this doll, and you were imagining stories and adventures, and you would make them talk, and all. Now you can do this, but because you're an adult and you've got more dexterity and you know how to tell a story, now you can tell exactly those same things, but everything is magical. And maybe that's the word, that even by today's standard, where people see all of those movies with the special effects and everything, when you look at stop motion animation, you know that it shouldn't be alive, but it is, and it's moving on its own. And also, you get the awe of discovering, oh my God, this is so well animated, and somebody has done this. Somebody has this raw talent, like to take a performance, transfer it onto the puppet, and make it come alive, and that you as an audience can connect with this object. I think it's this fascination. Maybe a side thing that I could say is that why are there the best making of movies are always made with stop motion animation? It's because when you look at them, a making of something that is digitally done, well, they're going to show you a screen. They're going to explain, oh yeah, well, we developed, this mathematical formula for actually doing this, and when I click on this button, it does that. Okay, wow, okay. And then you've got somebody else on the other side say, well, I'm working with clay and I'm doing this, and then after that I'm covering it, with another material to make this mold, and then I can do this, and I'm going to insert, like some metallic structure inside, and then I'll be able, like to move it around and to do this. And then people go like, oh, okay, they can better understand what is being done by this artist, with the la matière, then the other person is going to go, yeah, I wrote a mathematical formula, and if you hate, like mathematics, oh man, it's not going to work. So I don't know. It's an appeal, that you have, for things that are being constructed, I think.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from me.
I was getting goosebumps while you were talking, so I think.
Yeah, wow, thanks. I was trying to do my best to
really like
find.
that answer of connectivity and bringing it back to childhood, because that's when I think about why I do it, it's for the same reasons. I loved playing with clay and making stuff when I was a kid and telling little stupid stories, and now I get to do it in a way that it connects with other people, and they also know that they can reach out and touch those things too. And yeah, I really like that. So I have two more things to talk about.
Yeah.
First is, as a professor and teaching students, and I'm wondering, is there now that you've been teaching stop motion at Concordia for a while, is there a big demand from students to learn stop motion and get into it? Or
there's a huge demand. There's a huge demand. I teach one class. So within the corpus of Concordia University, it's a 3-year period. You have like a main branch, which is, let's say, animation 1, animation 2, animation 3, where you're actually going to be making different exercises and eventually leading up, like to your final film of your last year, right? All the way through this, you've got different classes that you can take, like from idea to storyboard and analytical drawing and a technical aspect, and of course, stop motion animation. So that's where I come into play, because I teach that one class, and that class is only one semester. So it's September to December, or sometimes January to April. In the class, we can only take 16 students. The class is always full. There's always like a lineup of students that get in touch with me, going like, Erik, can I please be in your class? I absolutely want to take this, and I've been waiting for 2 years, and now I want to. But it's kind of oversaturated. So I cannot accept, like more, because it's kind of the policy of the university that we are capped at 16. But there's students that will be really sad and they won't be able to take my class for another year. So they've got to wait, like a full year, as it's going to be given back in September. Since 2009, when I started the film festival, there was something in the air with Leica and Aardman Animation and Tim Burton. There was, like some productions that were being done. And don't ask me why, but I kind of felt that this was kind of the right time to start the film festival because more and more stop motion animated films were being done. So in 2000 we had Chicken Run. So Chicken Run comes out. It restarts the trend because Nightmare Before Christmas came out in 1993. And in 1993, it's the same year as Jurassic Park, right? So Jurassic Park kills stop motion animation as a special effects art form. But then Nightmare Before Christmas comes out and it shows the studios that, hey, we can do some stop motion films, a little bit like Walt Disney is doing with hand-drawn animation, but we can make puppets, sets, and we can tell, like stories in their own world. So that's a really big step for us, 1993. But then we've got to wait, like all of these years until there's another success, which is Chicken Run. We had James and the Giant Peach, but I think it didn't do that well, at the box office, so it kind of fell through. But in the year 2000, Chicken Run comes out. That kind of restarts the trend, and then all these studios are getting on board. So you've got the Fantastic Mr. Fox and the Carbs Bride and all of that. And of course, me starting the festival in 2009, I'm feeling this. And in 2012, that's when we get, like this golden year where we've got Pirates from Hardman Animation. We've got Frankenweenie from Tim Burton. And then we've got Paranorman from Leica. 3 stop motion feature film, like during the same year. I was so happy. That was, like one of my best years. I was like, oh yeah, stop motion rules, And then we had to wait, like as other films were coming along, like afterwards. But yeah, that's why there was a renaissance of stop motion animation and people falling back in love with it. All these younger students that I've got, that they come to my class. You can see, from this interview that we are doing, I'm very passionate about this. So I just give them, like a solid 4 hour of class on Tuesday night from 6 till 10. And then after that, they're all pumped and they go like, yeah, let's do some stop motion animation, So I just drive that team of 16 students. And then when they're done, like, well, you want to keep on going. So yeah, there has been a resurgence of stop motion over the past years.
So are you looking to build up the stop motion courses at Concordia so they can, they do the semester and then maybe there's a level 2, level 3, level 4?
So right now there is a level 2 because I've been hammering that nail. I said, we need another class. We need another class. And then at some point they said, Erik, do you think we need another class? Yes. Do you know what should be in the class? Yes. Animation. So that second level, we just do animation. That means exercises. We look at examples, and then I give them guidelines, and then they do a walk, they do a jump, they're gonna do atmospheric effects, like all of these things, and they just concentrate on the animation. So there's no set construction in the advanced class. There's none of that. We just make a basic puppet, and we use it for doing all of the exercises. So the level 1 that's been around since 2001 is puppet construction, set constructions, and animation. So we go through all of this. Then the level number 2, which is brand new, I started doing that 2 years ago, is the advanced. And the advanced, it's only animation. So yeah, we are kind of growing, but the university is a big boat, right? It doesn't turn on a dime. You've got to hammer that nail, like you've got to keep on going and asking for things. But I must say, over the past 3 or 4 years, I've seen a huge change at the university where we've got more equipment, more space, and we're better equipped, like to do a stop motion animation. So for me as a teacher, I'm really happy. The students are happy as well. But of course, if we had more, it would be great. But like they told me once, said, Erik, we cannot specialize in stop motion animation. We are a how can we say this? A general program where we touch everything, and it's the student that will develop its own style with the technique that he chooses. So we cannot, like narrow this too much. So we keep it wide, but if they want to go in a certain direction, we encourage them to do so.
Makes sense. So when somebody finishes the stop motion course, what do they go on to do in stop motion?
Oh my God, that is the trick question. I must say the trick question that you're asking. And I'm not gonna invent fairy tales. When you finish university, you're just like any other students, right? You're looking for work. So it's not necessarily the fact that it's not the willingness of the student to want to do something. It's more the openings that you've got in Montreal, and that leads us to a kind of a portion of the program where I'm going to say that we need to develop more jobs in Montreal in stop motion. So first of all, The Little Prince was a total luck. The film apparently was supposed to be done in France, but because we've got very good tax credits here in Montreal, those companies in France had some subsidies or branches here in Montreal, so it made sense, like to take the production and bring it down here. That's what I heard. So of course we had the talent and we pulled it off. And in my mind, I was going like, oh yeah, it's because of the talent that we were able to do so. But a lot of people told me, said, Erik, you can dream that it's that, but it's actually the tax credits. But nonetheless, we pulled it off. But the thing is that it's the only big production that we had. Plus, it wasn't full stop motion animation all the way, right? It was a part computer animation and stop motion animation. So
Right.
I'm still dreaming of this production that we would be doing here in Montreal. That's a full-fledged stop motion production. So going back to your question, what can a student do, that just graduated in stop motion animation? Well, there's some outlets here and there. That means corporate companies that are advertising the things that they're constructing via stop motion animation on the websites. There's some companies that are doing commercials and they're using stop motion to do so, among other technique. There's independent productions that are being done because we're really lucky in Canada that we've got a lot of programs that independent filmmakers can apply to get subsidies or grants, and they're going to be able to make their films. So we've got SADEC, we've got Telefilm, we've got also the National Film Board, which is another entity that will give the ability to a filmmaker to make his film. But of course, this filmmaker is not going to work alone, so he's going to hire other people to work on it. And that's where, if you're lucky, you'll end up, in one of those productions. So there are some things that are being done, but it's a little bit like being an actor, right? I mean, there's so many actors that are coming out of schools, but how many of them will end up, like on TV? How many will end up in a movie? How many will end up just doing infomercial, right? So it's the artistic side of the business that you will need, to wiggle your way around and find a job. But if we go back to maybe the statistic kind of, you see, in my class, I've got 16 students. I can tell you that out of 16, there's probably 4 or 5 that really, really, really wants to do stop motion animation. Others are taking the class because they're curious, they want to know about it. Some of them, I'll turn them around and they'll fall in love with stop motion. Others, they'll go through everything, they'll do it, but that's not necessarily what they'll end up doing. Those 4 or 5 that I'm talking about, those are the ones that at the end of the semester, I tell all my students, if you're really passionate about this, send me an email, let me know what you're up to. And you never know, I always have the phone ringing, a production that's looking for juniors to build some sets, and so that could be one way, of getting into the business. So I like I told you at the beginning of the entretien that we're having, is that I know I'm fortunate and I try to give back as much as possible, like my students that I was able to refer on The Little Prince. So I do the same thing with the students I've got right now. Plus, I've got some people sometimes that are writing to me. They're in Montreal. Maybe they're in their 30s or their 40s, and they're going like, "Oh, I always wanted to do stop motion animation, Erik. Is there any classes, that I could just take, like to do some basic stuff and things like that?" So sometimes I give, like classes just to introduce people to stop motion animation. So there's some teaching that can be done as well. There's corporate companies that don't even know, but they would benefit from having, little videos done in stop motion animation to promote their stuff, on their website. So you've got to have, like a creative and also a positive mind, and thinking about, okay, what do I want to do and how can I look at all of this and, and turn it to my advantage, so I end up doing what I really like, which is stop motion animation.
Yeah, well, I think that's really good. By the way, I just wanted to jump back and say thank you for giving a very clear timeline of kind of the stop motion industry. I've never heard it kind of like set out like that before. You started like Chicken Run and you went all the way to where
Yeah.
we are now.
Well, the
Um,
thing is that with I'm 52, so I've been
you've seen
through,
it
like
all.
all of this. I mean, A Nightmare Before Christmas, when it came out, I saw it in the theater and I was just blown away. With like, oh my God, who did this? Where do they come from? How come I didn't hear about it? So that's how you get interested in the business, and then you kind of learn the history because you were there as the history, like is being written. So that's what is cool. When I teach at Concordia, I teach the technique and all of that, but there's always at the beginning a little portion of my class that I call the puppet masters. And I talk about a puppet master that has contributed to our field. And I explain to the students why they are important. And then I show an excerpt of a production that they worked on. And I tell you, okay, Will Vinton, why is he, like so important? Because of claymation. This is what he's done. And look at this and look at that. And what's the progression between all of this? So I always try, like to do this because I think it's important to remember what was done before so that we can move forward, and accelerate that pace so that everybody learns and we grow, like the industry together instead of just having everybody here and then you've got one person, that's going to become really well versed and he knows everything. But when that person is gone, we go back, to that level. We've got to grow the industry and everybody's got to learn, like as much as possible. I know it's really hard because sometimes people develop certain techniques and because we're in the capitalist world, like, oh, I've developed this. I'm not going to tell anybody how it was done. But actually, like we should be sharing all of this, so that we know more and more about how things are constructed so that we can have more project and more people can work, on all of them. It's a big wheel, that needs to turn with the education and the production and it needs to work together.
So maybe this is the perfect segue into how you want to influence the industry in Montreal. I know you have some phases.
Yeah. Phase one. Yeah. I'm, like I'm like a cartoon character in a movie, right? Whenever I think about things, it's never, oh, let's have a party. It's let's have a super duper mega ultra party that's gonna do that. Like for me, the life is always in superlatives. I can just pile as much as I can. And when I came up, with the phases was from movies where you go like, okay, now it's time, like to engage phase two. And I said to myself, okay, phase one, that's the festival. The festival was phase one of the master plan where we need to put Montreal on the map. We need to know in Montreal who is doing things, and get people, like together. So that was phase one. Phase one has been around for the past 11 years. I've got a solid team in place right now, and the festival will keep on going. For people that are listening to us and they don't know exactly what we're talking about, I was the director for the first 10 years of the festival. And after 10 years, I said to myself, okay, I think I've done enough of that portion of my life to the festival. Now that we've got a team in place, I'm going to go on the administrative council. So I'm not gone. I'm still around. I'm helping out, and things like that. But let's say I'm not as heavily involved in the festival as I used to be, which brings me to the phase two. Phase two is we need to have more productions done in Montreal. So when I was ranting in the middle of our chat about Montreal promoting stop motion in town, if nobody's doing it, I'm gonna have to do it. And that's how I am in life, If I don't have something, that I think should be there, I'll go, okay, well, I'll do it. Even though I know nothing about this, I'm willing to learn. I'm a hard worker, and I think that I've got enough energy, that I can drive such a project. So right now I'm in phase two, and phase two is getting to know in Montreal who are the contacts that can help me, like promote worldly what could be done and try to bring some productions in town. Recently, I spoke with a professional in the field, and she told me, she said, Eric, like to bring big productions like this, like in Montreal, you've got to show them that you're capable of doing it. And I said, well, we already have the little prints that we did. She said, yeah, but it's not full stop motion. It was just short segments. You need to do, like a project to show the world, that it can be done with the team that you've got here. So there's some people I've been talking to, and they're kind of sending me in different directions. And I'm like, okay, well, the Bureau de Cinéma, you could talk with some people in there. Okay, well, you could do this, you could do that. So slowly I'm gathering all of this momentum and this information. And at some point, it's just going to go on, like to the next step of the phase 2. Now, there's a third phase, which I call, well, of course, phase 3. And phase 3, I'll be honest with you, I don't talk a lot about it because it's not a question of jinxing, or it's not a question of, but I just got to figure it out. You remember when I was talking about this big wheel, that productions cannot happen if we don't have education. So right now there's some education that is being done in Montreal on stop motion animation, mostly through my course, but there's also other courses that are being given, like left and right. But actually, we need an entity that will be stop motion specialized and would be able, like to actually put this in place as I can say it, as a school, as a court, a cooperative or something like that. We need to do this. We need to crystallize this so this can happen. If we bring, like productions in town and the people are not qualified enough, like to work on it, then that wheel is not gonna budge. Right now, like I feel that there's a momentum like this, right now it's turning where a lot of people are following courses, and we've got professionals that are coming to the festival to give workshops, and we're learning about all of these things. But until, like this goes more, we're still looking, like for production. So we need to find producers that are willing to come to Montreal and give us a chance, like to do so. But when we're talking about chances, that's something that producers don't want to hear, right? They've got money, they want to invest, and they want to make sure, that they're going to get, like a return on the investment. So we've got to play our cards right. And we've got to think about how we can approach producers like this, to bring them in town. I know that I've got the heart for it, and everybody loves stop motion and everything, but in the end, it's also the talent that you put on the screen that will sell, so people can go and see the movie. Money goes back to the producer is happy, and then he comes back here and he makes another movie, and that's how the wheel is going to turn. So it's phase 2 and phase 3 need to work together, and that's what I decided to work on for the next couple of years. So that's why the festival, I've taken kind of a back seat to it. Everything is peachy, everything is moving along, but on my side, I've got some new terrain to explore, and it's got to happen quickly because more and more students are coming out of Concordia. More and more people are interested. So we got to get that ball rolling.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it sounds super inspiring to me. It also sounds like you have a very clear vision of what is needed. It's just a matter of the pieces coming together. So
yeah,
I hope that, I can help contribute to this too, because I
Oh,
really love this idea of yours.
You'll know.
Although
I'll need all the help I can get.
Yeah, that's
We'll,
awesome.
we'll
So
see how the future unveils, like all of that strategy.
I was gonna ask what your biggest challenge to overcome in your near future is, but it almost sounds like you just
Yeah.
just laid it all out there.
Yeah, that's the one. I'm really busy right now. I'm doing contracts left and right, and I'm teaching left and right. So that keeps me busy. So whenever I've got time, like to think or to talk with people and pick their brains, like I try to do so. But I'll be honest with you, it's moving a little bit slower than I had anticipated. But that's another thing I discovered also in life, is that if you push too much for something and it's not budging, it's because it wasn't the right time. The doors will open when they're ready to be open. And I don't know, I'm so confident and positive about this. That's why I don't worry too much. I know there's a lot of work to be done, but I know somebody somewhere has a key that I need, like to unlock this, and just slightly open the door. And when people on the other side will see us coming, then they'll embrace this and go like, oh yeah, that's such a good idea. Why didn't you come sooner? I didn't have the key yet. So there you go.
Fair enough. And then your wife can keep being angry that all these opportunities come to you.
Well, well, actually, she's really happy for me because I'm doing what I really love. And like I was saying, I'm a very fortunate person, and that's why
Yeah.
I try to give back, like as much as possible. Um, it's not a question of, oh, if I don't, like I'm gonna lose this mystic era of things happening to me. But I think it's just common decency that when you've got, like some things to do and you've
Yeah.
got too much, why embrace all of this, and burn yourself up when there's so many people out there, who want to learn, who want to do it, and you can just take their hand, bring them on board, teach them some stuff, and that's how the community is going to grow. So we've got to, so we've got to get to it.
Yeah, well, I really admire that. I'm very happy we chatted, and it's very refreshing to hear also that you're doing exactly what you love doing. I think
Yeah.
even in the animation industry, there's a lot of dreams to get in, and then some people when they get in, they get stuck doing something that they didn't intend to do, and then they have
Yeah.
these dreams to do the thing they always wanted to do. So I think it's
Well,
amazing that you're
yeah.
doing
Well,
that, and that's kind of what I'm on a path to discover myself. So
but the thing also is that everybody's human, huh? And if you get in touch with me back, well, if you get back in touch with me in December, at the end of December, I finish the year and I always do a little retrospect of what I've done. I go like, okay, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. Oh, I did all of this, like for other people. Was
right.
I able to work on my own film and do my own stuff? I didn't. So I get a little bit, of a downer. Like, okay, next year I'm gonna try, like to at least sneak in, like a little something that will make me happy. Construct a puppet, sculpt a character, do something, but I think my purpose in life is actually to help out other people make their own stuff. It sounds kind of weird because some people might say, "But Erik, you're content with this, of helping others." Well, I discovered that I'm really good at it. I'm really good at having people come up to me and confer in me the dreams that they want to do, of constructing a puppet or doing this or doing that, and I can tell them, yeah, we can do this, we can do that, I can help you out with this, I can give you advice on this, but you need to talk with somebody else, for doing that. So after a while you get recognized as somebody that, oh, Erik, he's got good advice, that he can give you on your production. And sometimes there's some people that are just referred to me, which I don't know at all, and go like, "Hey, Rick, they told me you were the go person too for I've got questions regarding this." And a little bit like you did, like many years ago when you wrote to me. I mean, we didn't know each other, Terry, and
No.
I saw your email and I felt, that you really wanted to do this, but you were kind of lost a little bit. You didn't know in which direction going, and I kind of felt this, and I put myself in your shoes, and I went like, if I would have been, like younger, and I would have written to somebody, I would have wanted them, like to give me some feedback and give me some advice and just encourage me, like in pursuing and doing it. And that's why when I wrote to you, I remember when you told me, I went back to that email and I saw this exhaustive, super long email. They're like,
Yes.
I wrote all of this. Oh
You
my
wrote
God, I have
paragraphs and
tons of time
paragraphs.
in these days.
It
And I
was
was like,
so helpful. And I remember I didn't remember it was you specifically, but I remember getting that email and it was really encouraging, but I also in my like immediate life I didn't have I guess the vision for myself or the opportunities in front of me where I felt confident enough to take that path. So even though you gave me that email, it also confirmed to me that, what I needed to do at that point in my life. So
yeah,
I'm rereading your email now and
yeah.
going full forward. So
It's
and,
never too
and
late, my friend. Stop motion awaits.
yes, and but you just while you were talking now, I remember you said something in our pre-chat when we chatted a couple of weeks ago. It's you always try to move the ball forward even if you can't help in a specific
Yeah,
way. So if somebody reaches out and you're like, "Oh, this isn't my area of expertise," you don't stop the ball rolling. You
yeah,
you pass it on to somebody else or and push them in a different.
I think it's that matter of what they call, like positive energy. That if somebody comes to you and they're asking for something, you cannot just slam the door. If you just slam the door, like you're just negating all of this, and that person, you never know how that person is going to react, like to this thing. So whenever somebody gets in touch with me, I always, and I try as much as possible to always write back. And if I'm not the right person for the advice, I try to point them in another direction. I try, like to get the ping pong ball, on the table to bounce back and forth. You don't want to lose, like a ping pong ball, because you never know that person maybe in the future will be doing an animated film, and they're going to get back in touch with you and say, hey, like you give me some advice, like way back then, and now I'm working on this production. I've got a little bit of money. I'd like to hire you to work on my movie. So that wheel is always turning, as I say. So instead of stopping it dead, just give it a little tap, and okay, keep on going and do this and put a tap on the back. And I think if somebody has, like enough courage, like to send you an email, you should at least, like reply and try to be as helpful as you can. So I know I've been really busy in the past couple of years, and my emails have gotten a little bit shorter. Yours was really long. I read it and I went like, oh my God, I must have been not unemployed, but I had a lot of time in those days. Now I try to reply, but
Well,
I'm a little bit slow.
that was 13 years ago, so early 2000
Yeah.
ish.
So I was working at Softimage. I had more regular hours, like from 9 till 6 or something like that. So at night and weekends, I was able to answer things.
Well, there you
But
go.
no,
And
like you said, keep the
here we
ball
are
rolling.
talking all this time later. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. Is there anything else you want to share at all?
Oh, no, well, I just want to tell people, like to pursue their dreams.
Yeah.
I know it sounds corny, or sometimes, like you hear people, like saying that, but just keep on hammering that nail. And if you
Yeah.
are, like you keep on going, somebody will notice at some point. Might take a little bit of time. You've got to be patient. Like for me, I truly found, like my stop motion groove in 2009, but I have been working in the field, like all this time. So never give up on the little voice, that's telling you, oh, you should be doing this. Oh, have you thought of that? That's what makes thing move forward. And don't be afraid, like to organize things also. A
Mhm.
lot of times I feel that people are just waiting for things to happen, when in fact I discovered a long time ago that the best person, like to serve the ideas that you've got is yourself. Like
Yeah.
just get on that keyboard and write a first draft, of your ideas. Just put it in the back of your mind, and it's just gonna simmer, and then at some point it will bubble up and you'll go like, okay, I think the soup is ready. Let's do this. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's just keep on going. That's what we want. And stop motion rules. I know sometimes I tell my students, like, oh, all the other techniques, it's not as cool, as stop motion animation. So I'm gonna say it, even though everybody, like that's listening to the podcast is probably gonna say, yeah, well, computer rules and da. But stop motion, in my heart, tattooed everywhere. So there you
Well,
go.
like half of my episodes are just about stop motion now.
So you
It's a
see,
stop motion podcast.
conquering the world, the legion of stop motion artists.
Yeah, well, I like that you said don't give up on your dream, because I did not hear that enough when I was growing up, and even this past 10 years, and I don't think people hear that enough. And when they do, it's kind of like this, cartoony kids thing. It's not like a
Yeah.
serious adults endeavor. But this, in the same light, like you said, like nobody's gonna come along and be like, you know what, I'm gonna make Eric's dreams happen. No, Eric has to make his
Yeah.
dreams happen.
Yeah.
So don't give up on your dreams, but you have to be the one to push that forward too. So
Yeah. Find a way and just do it. and go baby steps. Sometimes also people think, that, oh, I want to have all of this done, like bam, in a very short amount of time. Sometimes, it's tiny little baby steps, that will lead you to something. And I could maybe finish with this just to give you an idea, is that a long time, a couple of years ago, when I was working at Softimage, we were working with computers, and it was all, well, not repetitive, but we were working digitally. And then at some point in my mind, I went like, okay, I miss, like being creative and doing things, with my hands or coming up with ideas and all of that. So at Softimage, I created what I call the Creative Club, which was a lunch gathering every 2 weeks where people would just come, sit around the table, and then we would go around and say, okay, so do you have some stuff that you're working on? And then the person would say, oh yeah, well, I always wanted, like to sculpt a character, and I'd like to experiment with this and that. I said, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And then second person would say, oh, I always wanted, like my guitar. I played the guitar and I always wanted to try, like this riff, but I've got a really hard time. So, and then we would go around like this, and that takes, like half of the lunch hour. And then the other half, we would go around and I would say, okay, so what are you going to show us, like in 2 weeks from now? And the person would say, okay, I'm going to purchase the material that I need to do my sculpt. That's my little goal that I'm giving myself. And the other one would say, okay, well, I'm going to dust off my guitar, like I'll bring it in 2 weeks, and I'm going to have it tuned, and I'm just going to show it to you. So you see all these little baby steps. We kept on meeting, and in the end, like people would come up, with something. Hey, I made a small animated films, like I'm going to show it to you. Wow. A couple of months ago, like you were just thinking about it. And now you've got, like a little short, not even a story, just a short animation test, that you had done. So sometimes go with baby steps instead of doing the whole thing, like all at once. And also, you will enjoy it more instead of doing everything, like all at once, and you might cut some corners and things like that. You do a little baby step. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, yeah. And then after the following week, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And that has worked for me a lot, doing this and making little lists and just scratching off, like a baby thing, that was supposed to be done, but I did it, and then I scratch it off. I move on to the next one. So there's tons of tricks like this. I didn't invent this, but it's just tricks that help you out, like in moving forward. So,
well,
yeah,
I think that's great advice to leave on. So, Erik, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm really happy that we were able to talk, like about all of these things. Sometimes I get, like interviews, and I can only talk about, like a certain portion, but I feel that this podcast actually has all the links of
all
the
big
chain, and now you know that this chain is made of stop motion, like from A to Z. So, well, actually, I should say from A to the letter P. I still have to work from that letter all the way down to Z, because we got so much more work to get done. But it's very encouraging when you talk about what you've done. You see, okay, I was able to do all of this. Let's keep on going. So that's another thing also. Sometimes look back over your shoulder at what you were able to achieve, and take a deep breath, and keep on going.
Yeah.
Thank you, Terry, for the opportunity.
And if you're listening and you'd like to get in touch with Erik, you can head on over to his the festival's website, stopmotionmontreal.com, and send in an email there. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye.